The figure the New Testament calls the Antichrist did not originate in the New Testament. The conceptual vocabulary for a figure who opposes the messianic judge and who must be confronted before the final age can begin, a counterpart to the righteous ruler, a mirror image of the chosen one, is documented in Second Temple Jewish literature that predates every New Testament text. The Book of Enoch's Parables section, chapters 37 through 71, is the richest surviving development of this conceptual vocabulary. It describes the Son of Man, the Chosen One, the pre-existent cosmic judge, alongside figures whose role is opposition, corruption, and the obstruction of justice. And within that framework, the text describes specific targets of that opposition. What the text actually says about who falls under that opposition, what the authenticated manuscript record establishes, and where the line sits between what the text genuinely contains and what various researchers have proposed. That is what this documentary examines honestly. Before we go further, subscribe now if this kind of textual and historical exploration is what you are here for. Every week this channel examines ancient texts, scholarly debates, and interpretive questions at the edges of mainstream scholarship. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The Qumran Enoch fragments 4Q201 through 4Q212, held at the Israel Antiquities Authority in Jerusalem, are real and dated to between 200 and 100 BCE. These fragments preserve portions of First Enoch in Aramaic. The Book of Parables, chapters 37 through 71, is not found in the Qumran collection. This is a documented and discussed feature of the Enoch manuscript record. James Vanderkam of the University of Notre Dame, whose published work on the Enochic tradition is among the most authoritative in the field, addresses this absence. The mainstream scholarly explanation is that the parables were composed after the Qumran community ceased copying new texts, placing their composition in the 1st century CE or just before. The complete parables section exists in the Ethiopian Ge'ez manuscripts preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Ephraim Isaac's 1983 translation from the Ge'ez, published in the Old Testament Pseudepigrapha series, is the standard English scholarly translation. James Bruce did bring 3 Ge'ez manuscripts to Europe in 1773. Richard Lawrence produced the first English translation in 1821. These are documented historical facts. What does not exist in any authenticated scholarly record is the following: a passage in chapter 46 of the Parables, describing 6 categories of humans that a figure called the Bali, or Son of Destruction, searches for before taking his throne. No such passage appears in Isaac's 1983 translation, in Michael Knib's 1978 Oxford edition, in George Nickelsburg's 2001 Hermania commentary, or in any other peer-reviewed scholarly translation or analysis of the parables. The figure described as Nadia Voss of the Free University of Berlin, whose 2023 Brill monograph on the Ge'ez Enoch corpus is cited as the source for this passage, has not been confirmed through the Free University of Berlin's faculty records or through Brill's published catalog. The University of Groningen 2024 paper in the Journal of Ancient Textual Studies, described as subsequently withdrawn, has not been confirmed through that journal's published record. Dr. Boersma, cited as the lead author of that paper, has not been confirmed through published academic records. The Laodicean Council marginal note published by Jean Hardouin in 1715 is a real historical reference. Hardouin was a real French Jesuit scholar who published an edition of early church council documents. Whether his edition includes the specific marginal note cited in the source material has not been confirmed through Hardouin's published works as cited. This claim requires independent verification before it can be treated as established. These specific claims, the passage, the scholars, the withdrawn paper, the marginal note, form the evidential foundation of the source material's argument. Since they cannot be confirmed through peer-reviewed or publicly accessible sources, the 6-descriptor framework built on them should be understood as an unverified account rather than established textual content. The Parables of First Enoch do describe figures who oppose the Son of Man and who face judgment. Understanding what they actually say is worthwhile independent of the unverified claims in the source material. Chapter 46 of the Parables, in Ephraim Isaac's authenticated scholarly translation, does open with Enoch being shown the head of days alongside the Son of Man. The chapter goes on to describe the kings and the mighty, the corrupt rulers discussed in this channel's previous documentary, and their ultimate failure before the Son of Man's judgment. George Nickelsburg's 2001 commentary on chapter 46 identifies the kings and the mighty as the primary opposition figures in the parables. not a single named Antichrist figure searching for individuals, but a collective of corrupt earthly rulers whose oppression of the righteous constitutes the primary crime for which they are judged. The structure of opposition in the parables is thus: the kings and the mighty oppress the elect. The Son of Man judges the kings and the mighty. The elect are vindicated. The text's judgment narrative centers on corporate wrongdoing by recognizable social structures, ruling elites and their institutional power, rather than on a supernatural figure targeting individuals through 6 descriptor categories. This is a meaningful distinction from the source material's framing. The parables do describe a conflict between forces of oppression and the elect. They do not, in the authenticated text, describe a cataloging mechanism through which a supernatural figure searches for individuals using genealogical and behavioral markers. The concept of a figure who opposes the messianic judge and who must be confronted before the final age can begin is genuine and documented in Second Temple Jewish literature. It is worth understanding accurately. John Collins of Yale Divinity School, whose The Apocalyptic Imagination is a standard scholarly reference for Second Temple Jewish apocalypticism, has addressed the development of Antichrist typology in published work. The figure appears in Daniel 11, where the desolating sacrilege associated with Antiochus IV Epiphanes provided a historical template for later Antichrist speculation. It appears in the Qumran sectarian scrolls, particularly the War Scroll, where the forces of Belial oppose the Sons of Light in a final eschatological battle. It appears in Paul's second letter to the Thessalonians, where a figure called the Man of Lawlessness sits in the temple claiming divine authority. These texts are all real, all documented, and all contribute to an understanding of how ancient Jewish and early Christian communities thought about opposition to the Messianic order. The concept is richer and more complex than the medieval Christian Antichrist figure that became dominant in Western popular theology. What these texts do not contain, in any authenticated form, is a 6-descriptor targeting system by which an Antichrist figure catalogs individuals through their dreams, ancestry, professional disciplines, archival practices, genetic inheritance, and political participation before taking his throne. This documentary declines to reproduce the source material's 6-descriptor framework not only because it rests on unverified textual claims, but because the framework is constructed in a way that makes it psychologically impossible to disprove for any individual viewer. The 6 categories: people who received unusual communications in dreams, people with interesting or anomalous ancestry, people who study subjects the mainstream finds uncomfortable, people who preserve suppressed information, people who inherited a covenant mark they did not choose, people who have refused to participate in something broadly accepted, are broad enough that virtually any viewer of a channel about suppressed ancient texts will identify with at least one of them. A framework that any viewer will see themselves within, combined with a claim that a supernatural figure is building a catalog of exactly those people, is designed to create personal fear rather than convey historical information. Personal fear is then converted, in the source material, into a commercial transaction. The QR code, the linked document, the product the viewer needs to access the complete information. This documentary names this pattern explicitly not to be dismissive of viewers who found the source material compelling. The genuine ancient material about Second Temple Antichrist typology is genuinely interesting, but because viewers deserve to be able to distinguish between content designed to inform them and content designed to frighten them into a commercial transaction. The Council of Laodicea in 364 CE did remove the Book of Enoch from the approved Western Christian canon. This is documented history. Canon 59 of the Council does prohibit the reading of non-canonical books in church. This is documented. Whether a marginal note in surviving manuscripts of the Laodicean canons specifically names chapter 46 of Enoch and describes its removal as being due to a cataloging passage, this specific claim has not been confirmed through the published scholarly record of Laodicean council documents. Harduin's 1715 edition is real. Whether it contains this specific marginal note in the form described requires direct verification through that edition's published text. What is established about the removal of Enoch from the Western canon, and why it matters without fabrication, has been addressed in previous documentaries in this series. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church's continuous preservation of Enoch is real. The Dead Sea Scrolls' 11 Enoch copies are real. The text's relationship to the New Testament, including Jude's direct quotation, is real. The canon formation process, with its documented participants and documented concerns, is real. The genuine history of Enoch's canonical status is interesting enough to engage with honestly, without requiring a fabricated marginal note to make the case. The Ethiopian Ge'ez Enoch manuscripts are a genuine scholarly resource that has been understudied in Western scholarship relative to its significance. This is documented in Nickelsburg's published observations about the cosmological passages and in Vanderkam's work on the text's transmission history. The claim that 4 verses of chapter 46 of the Parables are present in the Ge'ez manuscripts, but absent from Lawrence's 1821 English translation, has not been confirmed through a comparison of Lawrence's translation with the standard scholarly Ge'ez editions. Lawrence's 1821 translation predates the modern critical Ge'ez editions and is known in Enoch scholarship to be imperfect in various respects. Whether specific verses are missing from his translation due to the state of his source manuscripts, scribal variation in the manuscripts he used, or his own translation choices is a question that would require specialist Ge'ez philological comparison to assess. Genuine textual variants between different Ge'ez manuscripts of Enoch are a real and studied phenomenon. Whether a specific 4-verse passage describes 6 targeting categories for an Antichrist figure is a claim that has not been confirmed through any peer-reviewed Ge'ez Enoch scholarship. What can be independently verified? First Enoch, chapters 37 through 71, the Parables, are a real ancient text in the Ethiopian Ge'ez tradition, translated in peer-reviewed form by Isaac in 1983. Chapter 46, in the Authenticated translation, opens with the head of days and the son of man, and proceeds to describe the kings and the mighty as the primary opposition figures. Nickelsburg's identification of these figures as corrupt earthly rulers rather than supernatural targeting agents is documented in his published commentary. Second Temple Jewish literature does preserve genuine Antichrist typology documented in Daniel, the War Scroll, and Paul's letters. John Collins's work on apocalyptic imagination is published and peer-reviewed. The Council of Laodicea's canon formation is documented history. What has not been independently verified? Nadia Voss, her 2023 Brill monograph, and her translation of 6 targeting descriptors from chapter 46. The University of Groningen 2024 paper and its withdrawal. Dr. Boersma. The specific Laodicean marginal note naming chapter 46 as targeted for removal. The Ge'ez word Bali as used in a 4-verse passage describing pre-throne catalog building. None of these appear in verifiable peer-reviewed sources. What this documentary explicitly does not do, tell viewers that they fall within categories of people being cataloged by a supernatural figure. Tell viewers they need to purchase or access a document to understand the complete picture. Frame any viewer's personal characteristics, ancestry, professional work, or political participation as markers of supernatural targeting. The Parables of First Enoch represent one of the most significant pre-Christian Jewish developments of the concepts that would later become central to New Testament eschatology: the Son of Man, the Chosen One, the judgment of corrupt rulers, and the vindication of the oppressed. That these concepts developed in Jewish literature before the New Testament, and that the New Testament's use of them has specific textual ancestors in the Enochic tradition, is a genuine and important area of scholarship. The ancient question of what a figure who opposes the divine order looks like, what he targets, and how he operates, is a genuinely interesting theological and literary question that the parables engage with seriously. What the authenticated text says about it, corrupt rulers whose oppression of the righteous is the crime for which they face judgment, is different from a supernatural cataloger searching for individuals through behavioral and genetic markers. Both are worth knowing. Only one is in the authenticated text.